This episode of the Danger Close podcast is brought to you by Cry Havoc. From New York Times #1 best-selling author, Jack Carr. Cry Havoc, a Tom Reese thriller. Order now.
There's the Jeff Goldblum quote from Jurassic Park.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
And when I say that, it's mostly pertaining to the world of social media and the things that we're racing to build because we can. And we can build it fast, we can break it, and we can think about it later. And we have never been in more trying times than now, and most people don't even realize it. And I think that if we at least lay out what the battleground is and just assess what we're dealing with, I would not want to bet against humanity. I think that people love to overcome adversity, and I think we're really, really good at it. I think the problem is a lot of people just don't know what's going on.
You've lived it from its inception, like this whole generation of being online, and not just being online, but having your life tied to these different now apps that are manipulating you. And I want to talk about that because I think this is one of the most important books that I have read and that has been written about the modern age. I mean, it doesn't, I don't think you ever really mentioned parenting in here, but it is a book for parents. It is a book for their kids. It is a book of awareness. And you're up against the might of the most profitable and powerful companies in the history, essentially, of the world, essentially. Let's say modern world. And it's so important. I'm going to get this for another copy for my wife, for my kids, for everybody that works for me. Everybody's going to get a copy of this book. I think it is so important. It needs to be on the. I mean, it's a weapon. And it's awareness, but it's a weapon because you were essentially, I don't know if you say at war with, but there's a conflict with.
No, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Cause I'm very, me, I'm very ADD in so many different ways. And Marcus Aurelius's Meditations was like the perfect first book for me to read because I could read something and then set it down and then pick it back up. And so it was very important for me to set tones of chapters that I could come back to. And so I have a lot of quotes in there, but I felt it was very important to lead the book off with Prince's quote, which was, "There's a war going on. The battlefield is in the mind and the prize is the soul." And I think that's so applicable to what's happening now in society.
Oh, it sure is. That one jumped out to me right here. But so people are wondering what we're talking about. We're talking about this box, which I'm going to open here. And I mean, I opened this thing up. I'm like, speaking of weapons, I mean, like this thing, you could like do some serious damage with this thing, maybe some van damage with this thing for those who recall. But this thing is this box is so beautiful. And then the cover of this book, first thing, I mean, I saw this cover. I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, you crushed it with this cover. It is beautiful. Cover. I love when red pops. If you notice in the terminal list, which thank you for the mention in there, by the way. But there was red, like a red cape on the daughter. There's a red incorporated only into a few certain scenes that signify this conflation / flashback type of a thing, but it's used very sparingly. So I love that you use this red here only in gardening with the flower right there. But amazing. And then thank you for everything else that was in here. But what a beautiful presentation. I mean, this thing blew me away. I was like, son of a... And I knew you were writing something, but I didn't know it was coming, like when it was coming out. It was kind of a surprise that it came out because I knew you were working on it. And then I got it and man, I was just blown away. And now that I've read it, I'm even more impressed with what you've done. And I wanted to ask you first off, is there an audio of this?
I've yet to record it. Everyone's so adamant about me recording it myself. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it over the next month. I'll release it probably this fall.
Okay, good. Surprising you didn't do that right out of the gate, being this, I mean.
I know. I don't have Ray's number.
Come on. I could hook it up. I could definitely hook it up. But then people will be like, why didn't you do it? It's your voice, type of a thing for a nonfiction, for something like this. I almost think that you should, you're planning on doing it. You just said.
I debated on doing, because 11 Labs just came out with a really fine-tuned AI model. And I know a lot of creators out there are very reluctant to use artificial intelligence systems, but it's kind of in line with me and the things that I've done in the past. So
it would make sense for this to actually use that. And I'll talk about AI a little bit later, but I'm also going to keep my eye on the clock here, because I want to be very cognizant of your time. And speaking of time, I want to talk to you about time, because you bring that up in here. But I think it would work for you to do this, but to do an AI version. But I was thinking about AI the other day as it comes to art. And it seems like there should be something that lets the consumer know if a book, a painting, a photograph was made with AI, so that at least at least you're aware. If it matters to you, you want something made by humans? Well, maybe this isn't for you. If it doesn't matter, if you just love this picture, or this painting, or this book, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter, then wonderful. But at least you're aware of it as a consumer. Kind of like in the 80s when explicit lyrics came out, like it was on there. Okay, great. It's like an explicit lyric so that the consumer has the choice. You're not being tricked into thinking this thing that's been hanging in your house for 15 years, and you've talked to people when they walk in the front door about how beautiful it is, and then one day you find out that it was made by AI. And you're like, oh.
Well, you're laying the framework for the conversation that I think everybody needs to be having now. We've been put in this illusion of thinking that social media is representative of reality, but it's actually not. I would say it's a fraction of a percentage, a sensationalized version of some people's very, very small portion of their life, right? So you get your Instagram filters or your Facetune photoshopped images, and you can see that in the statistics around young women, even men with body dysmorphia. I think the numbers are increasingly over the last 10, 15 years just skyrocketing. And I think that's a byproduct of incentive misalignment around the world of social media and the attention economy. And I think that we haven't had these asterisks or these warnings. So for me, I'm like, with artificial intelligence, the last 2 years since Stable Diffusion XL, I've created over 200 AI influencers that have millions of followers, and nobody knows that they're AI. Because the way that I did it wasn't with mainstream popular models. We ran our own diffusion models. And so I'm able to inject my own metadata into the images and stuff like that, because I want to create as much AI slop out there to force people to have these conversations, because I don't think that people realize just the downstream effects of having social media, or a generation grow up on social media in this distorted reality.
Yeah.
The 6-hour MCX Spear LT. With reduced IR signature coating, folding stock, fully ambidextrous controls, SIG suppressor ready, and interchangeability with all MCX LT barrels and handguards. Pairs perfectly with the Tango 6T optic, selected by US SOCOM in 2017 as the squad variable powered scope. This setup is ready to go. The 6-hour MCX Spear LT. 6 hour. Never settle.
I was going to ask you about the AI bot thing, because you've talked about that before. So you created these AI bots, so fake accounts that are out there that people think are real, but you created them. And did you start doing that? Like, why did you decide to do? Did someone hire you to do that, or did you just say, "Hey, I'm going to run this experiment. I'm curious about this, or I want to continue to professionally develop as I see the landscape evolve"? Like, what was the point of creating like the first one and then creating 200 of them?
Yeah, so I've always been curious around the inner workings around social media. So I guess put a pin in it. I built a YouTube app 4 years before YouTube had one in the App Store. So this was predating the partner program, because at the time YouTube was very much a desktop driven application. And so I started creating mobile apps for content creators to tie AdSense to. Which led to a good relationship with YouTube and Alphabet. And that kind of kickstarted my curiosity around the inner workings around the system, knowing that it was going to be a huge part of society. And so I'd start, we referred to engineers as unicorns because they held the keys to algorithmic weight. And you hear people say the boogeyman name of the algorithm. Well, there's multiple algorithms, and all that really is weighted emphasis on various things, measurements. So it could be engagement, it could be search and related, all these different things. What are you trying to achieve with it? Well, within the attention economy, the commodity that they're trading is your attention or the time you're spending on those platforms. And what I wanted to know was, how could I turn that into something a little bit more profitable for myself? So I started testing these different things. I had a YouTube account. This is, again, like 2012, probably 2011, where I had a reply channel where it was a provocative female mannequin that would reply. I would do a garbage mask around the mannequin's mouth and reply, essentially trend jacking search and related. I would go through Google Analytics and figure out what videos were going to trend. And then I would do replies to them, and I would show up in the suggested box to them. And I would get all this traffic, all these views off of them. And I'd spend about 5 minutes a day doing that. Really, what that was me doing was testing algorithmic weight, seeing what was going to be the thing that could give me momentum for things that I actually wanted to monetize or I actually cared about, which were brands. Launched a media company with Verizon and Hearst, which was rated red. We started Black Rifle Coffee around the same time in 2014, 2015. So all of these different things were able to capitalize and leverage the kind of behind the scenes knowledge of algorithmic weight and trends and stuff like that. So for me, I'm always curious. I'm always testing. And I saw the writing on the walls about 2 years ago with the diffusion models, where there were all the jokes about the Will Smith eating spaghetti stuff and how bad it was and the hands and everything else. But now it's gotten a lot better. And so, I built my own diffusion model off of Flux, which allows people to create photorealistic images, but I don't even care about that. It's not something that I'm wanting to make a living off of or anything. I'm just trying to elicit that conversation from people. What are we doing here? Like, why are we allowing this transaction to happen in a way that people aren't really, they're not really assessing their values in life, and it's slipping away from them. And like I would say in the book is, commodity or time is the commodity that we're trading here. And you look at all the billionaires out there, what are they trying to do? They're trying to buy back their time. And it's the one thing that you can't do, at least until we invent time machines, or you're able to upload your consciousness to a computer or something. But then we get into the philosophical conversation of what is a soul and all these. I know we're deviating from the point here, but it's a lot to take in.
It is. It's insane. And in talking about this with other people, I bring up when people ask me about time spent online and building or engaging and all the rest of it. I think that first thing that you need to be aware of is that you're being manipulated. As soon as you open anything up on your phone, you are somehow being manipulated. And to elicit a response, it used to be maybe in the beginning, you can tell me if I'm wrong, manipulate you to, even before, you can go back before the internet age. Somehow some electronic device is manipulating you to purchase something. And your attention is on this, but they're using that to get you to purchase something. Okay, now it moves into the internet age when there's just the internet, and maybe you get an ad or something that pops up. Okay, and then we get the iPhone, and then we get the apps, and then we get the social platforms, and then both our businesses, in a lot of cases, and our personal lives are tied to this device that has these apps on it, and everything that you see on X is manipulating you in some way, shape, or form to do something. And it's not necessarily to buy a product anymore. It's manipulating thoughts and behaviors. And you talk about rewiring. You talk about so many amazing things in the Warrior's Garden here that people need to be aware of if they're not. And then so that first step is that awareness, I think, that you're being manipulated. And then the second step is, okay, what are you going to do about that? What is your time worth to you, to your family? And what is it worth to, let's say, Mark Zuckerberg, who you you mentioned in here in a paragraph, and optimizing the financial gain for Meta. But going back to the AI bots real quick, because I was like, what? I saw that 200, and I was like, so what are they currently doing? Are they giving you information that you're using for something else, or are they out there
Yes.
for another reason?
So it's not completely autonomous. So I have one social media manager that runs all of the accounts. And so what we did initially, knowing that it was going to be primarily photo driven and needing that social media manager to really curate the tone and the vibe. So like one might, and I started with a large data set because I like to split test and figure out what's going to gain the most traction. So I had 50-50 male female. I had various ethnicities. I all of them, I wanted them to be PG or PG-13 at the very most. Nothing in any way, shape, or form provocative, because I felt like that was low-hanging fruit and that would be the inevitable gutter like that people would gravitate to and go, oh, that's AI. So I wanted subtle accounts that were built over the last 2 years. Now there is something that I haven't really talked about, which I'll throw out there now, which is really kind of fascinating, is you'll see a lot of attention in the media now. This AI account has hundreds of thousands of followers. Well, it's just true. Some of our accounts do have hundreds of thousands of followers, but it's from organic growth over the last 2 years. Now you'll see some of them that have like 3 months of posts. And what a lot of these people are doing to capitalize off of the PR is they'll buy other social media accounts, they'll delete all of the posts, and they'll use the existing follower base, we'll say, as a metric for people to launch off of. And they just don't get the engagement that some of the other accounts would, which is kind of interesting because a lot of them are using known AI models like Stable Diffusion or OpenAI and these other different ones. But for me, it's really fascinating to see which ones are flagged in the social platforms, because some of them you do an AI post and it's immediate. I mean, immediately flagged for AI, and it throttles its distribution and everything. And so I have a few hypotheses on these, and that's why I don't really publicly talk about a whole lot of what it is that I'm doing, because I don't want those data sets kind of tainted. Because I'll give you an example. One of the things that we do is we'll take and we'll change the metadata associated with the photo. So if you go into your camera roll, hopefully you being a known figure, you have location data taking off of your photos and stuff like that.
I'm pretty sure I do. And you have to watch it every time you do an update or something like that, or get the new phone, because your mind's like just going fast, going to this. And you're like, don't think about it. And you have to go back and check, because sometimes those updates, they try to sneak all these things in, turn things back on that you turned off, and you just automatically, those are a little sneaky.
And one of the things that people don't think about is okay, so maybe the average person who downloads your photo isn't getting that metadata, but the social platforms are. And the social platforms know where you're at if it has that enabled by default. So one of the things we experiment with is various geolocation faking, spoofing, I guess you could say. It'd be kind of funny to, in this political climate and everything, to change a lot of photo data to like Epstein Island or something, like create an app that just allows people to change their photos to that or something like that. But if you change the location, you can change the camera type. So if it was taken on an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy, what focal length. And if you do all of these things, it makes it more plausible to their AI detection systems that this was an actual photo, because it's the diffusion models have gotten so good now. It's very hard to tell the difference between a real photo and something that somebody took that was photoshopped and maybe face-tuned, and something that was completely AI generated. And so the conversations that I think we need to have in the future, very much like what you were talking about, is how do we validate actual human behavior? Because there are those theories around, like, say, dead internet theory, that all or more than half of the internet communication was generated or artificially generated after 2016, that there were more bots communicating with humans and communicating with bots than there were actually humans communicating across platforms and emails and stuff like that.
That is crazy. So am I communicating with a bot? Something like if I like sometimes it's easy to tell on a social post when some things pop, and this is very basic level stuff. Like it pops up and it's you know, you can obviously tell this has nothing to do with your post and nothing to do. This isn't a real person, and you just like delete it or whatever to clean it up or whatever. But I wonder how many of the people that I think are real people under a post are not.
Yeah, it's going to get way more difficult to tell. And you can do a little bit of diligence and go through, look at the person's profile,
Yeah.
see what the list of all their comments were before, and kind of maybe figure out whether or not they're a bot. But if it's the same thing over and over, high probability. If it's variable and they're on multiple accounts, maybe it is a real person. Who knows? It's getting increasingly more and more difficult. And the thing with the social platforms is now they're getting all of this quote unquote AI slop. And in the past, for us to post to social media, we made that trade-off because hosting in the early 2000s was extremely expensive. It cost a lot of money to host a viral video. If you uploaded a video to YouTube and you got 1 million views, you might make some money. If you uploaded it to your server, you get a bill from your internet service provider for probably like $50,000 to $100,000, saying, "Hey, you owe us for that traffic or whatever." So it was a good trade-off for a lot of people back in the day. But in 2012, kind of what I was getting at in the book was that there was this thing that happened with the partner program, and when we shifted from just sheerly consumption to a creator economy, the incentives started misaligning, where people were like, "Oh, I can make money off of this." Everybody becomes a creator and everything, and that's fine. You do you, make your living. But I think a lot of people are walking about their life thinking that the social platforms are actually social, but realistically, they're more about extracting that value, that time from that attention from your life, so that they can serve you more relevant ads, so that the advertisers can pay the social platforms and they can make money. And so, and the I don't even know. I think I told you what the original title of the book was
You
potentially.
probably did, but I forget.
Okay, I'll just say it. I was going to call it Slave Traders, and I thought about the cover of the book being an auction gavel, or a judge gavel in the color palette of Google, and essentially how the attention economy has trapped so many different people, where they're buying and selling your life, your time, in a way that I don't think the average person really fully understands or comprehends. It's like, you know what? If I'm going to be true to my thesis in this, I need to put a positive spin on this. I need to come at it from more of a, just an optimistic perspective. And for me, the whole world of regenerative agriculture and soil and building that is such a great euphemism in that, there's a saying that it's not how much rain you get, it's how much you keep. If you have really healthy soil, you have cover crops, you have roots growing into the ground. When you get an inch of rain, you get infiltration into the aquifers. The soil becomes a sponge. It helps you through that drought and everything else. If you have really barren soil, you get wind erosion, you get a crust on top of it. When you do get that inch of rain, it sheds off into the waterways and everything else. And I thought that's just a perfect analogy, in that all inputs really, really dictate your outputs. So if your inputs are all this negativity, which by design is meant to elicit these fight or flight responses to keep you on platform as long as possible, your inputs on a constant basis are negative or provocative or whatever they are, and your baselines are just getting destroyed in this process. And I think you can see it in a lot of people, man. Like how many podcasts are you hear billionaires and millionaires just depressed and angry and
Oh,
everything.
jeez.
And I'm like, man, we are living in the best of times. Like when you get that inch of rain, it's not to say that people don't have hard times, but jumping towards the end of the book, the thing that was most powerful for me was gratitude. And
Yeah,
I
for sure.
think that so many people can find that in the littlest things in their lives. Like it could be religion, and it could be just, an agnostic person before every meal, just being grateful for that, opportunity to consume something, where it's like, and again, it's not like I don't know, your parents like, there's starving kids in the world, finish your peas and stuff. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but there's a grain of truth to that. Like there really is. Like, the old saying of, hard times,
Mm-hmm.
we're in pretty good times right now. So for me, that was kind of the path, and really like trying to encompass like all of these different types of statistics and everything else was just, it was a truly humbling experience for me, and I'm really grateful for it. Really
Yeah.
grateful.
Yeah. Since 2003, Bravo Company Manufacturing, founded by a U.S. Marine veteran in Heartland, Wisconsin, has been crafting mission-ready weapon components for professionals who demand reliability. Trusted by U.S. Special Operations, law enforcement, and responsible citizens worldwide, BCM gear is engineered and tested to perform in the most unforgiving environments. Every BCM tool is built and tested as if your life depends on it. Go to Bravo Company USA for more information. Bravo Company, American-made, duty-built. Yeah, the negativity part is so crazy. It's like, people didn't used to have an outlet for some sort of a negative reaction to, let's say, a piece of art, something subjective. Let's take something subjective. So it could be a book, it could be a film, it could be a TV show, it could be sculpture, whatever it is. And if there was an outlet for that, guess it was a spouse. Like, oh, I hate this TV show. They got this all wrong, and she doesn't care. Okay.
Yeah.
But doesn't care that the guy has his finger on the trigger and it, or tries, they're talking about a safety on a Glock or whatever. Like, who cares? Like, but now guess what? You can tell everybody that was on that show, you can get online, you can spend time you're never going to get back in life, like going after somebody because of something that you didn't like. And so it's totally it's totally reprogrammed how people respond to things, how people spend their time. And I mean, I don't know. That's why I never put anything negative on. I never respond to negative comments. I never do that. But I try to say thank you to people online, which means that I see the negative ones on there. And I never fail to think like, man, this person is wasting their life. Like telling me, I think it was just yesterday I saw one, and it was about Terminal List coming back in the top 10 over 4th of July weekend on Amazon Prime 3 years after it came out. So I posted something, about that or whatever. And it was got to number 6, and we have the new show coming out in August 27th with Dark Wolf, which is the prequel. And so I just put that up there, a little link to the Screen Rant article or something. And someone's like, "Oh, I'm not watching that with all the commercials on Prime." And I'm like, like, all right, but you lost time in your life, like telling me and telling a bunch of other people who don't care about commercials on Prime. I don't even know. I don't see commercials on my Prime for some reason, but I guess they are out there. Maybe it's depending on what subscription you have or something. I don't know. But I mean, you're wasting your life being negative to people who don't care. It's crazy that you would spend this gift of life. Like the chances of you being here are so small in the first place. And then you have this gift of life and you're spending it complaining online. Like that, to me, that's a manipulation by the tech overlords or whatever, to get that information or whatever, to manipulate your thoughts and behaviors and keep you on their platform. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's one of those things as a business owner, I think you definitely, and people listening will understand, is like everybody comes to you with problems, and knowing that there's problems. Very, very few people come to you with constructive solutions or criticisms. How do you get out of this? And so for me, really like trying to parse all of that noise to find some type of signal. And it's really kind of fascinating. Like the way I looked at it was like, oh, there comes a point in time, and maybe everyone's life, be it a parent, a teacher, or someone, where you realize, oh, we're all the same. Like you think that the adults are in control, that they're way more intelligent than you, or whatever, or you think that there's something that's architecturally designed to be a certain way. No, I don't think that Mark Zuckerberg or Elon or anyone makes these engineering decisions, going on their throne. Well, you know what? This might have negative implications for society. No, I think it's just a byproduct of just incentive misalignment, where it's like, okay, let's do this thing here. This might increase P&L here, or our bottom line there, or whatever. And these ounces equal pounds. It's like looking at a target, and if your dope is off just a little bit, yeah, maybe 10 yards out, not a big deal. But 100 yards, 1,000 yards, you're missing the mark big time. And I think that's where we're at. Where, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it wasn't a big deal. Now we're really starting to see the downstream consequences of an attention economy where people really like their dopaminergic systems are just exhausted, like in this fight or flight mode all the time. So what are these constructive things? The best thing about all of this research is a lot of this stuff is hard and as challenging as it is, it's not expensive. It's actually pretty free. like from community, finding people, be it local groups, game clubs, churches, whatever it is, communities, accountability is such a huge one. I could not believe the research around accountability. Like the creating a plan increased your chances of success by like 50%.
Well, that sounds obvious.
Having somebody like that you discuss that accountability with increases it by 65%. Having an appointment. So like for me, what I do every Saturday at like 9 or 10 a.m., I'll post my consumption for screen time every week. And that's kind of like one of my accountability, measurements. And that's 95%. That's a oddly specific number. That's really, really high. So I still question it, but it came from a peer-reviewed research study. So, there's all of these things that on paper seem relatively easy, but they're still really, really difficult to achieve, especially in this connected, society and everything. So for me, gratitude was probably the biggest, the most meaningful needle mover for me. And the story that I'd tell about that was traffic. I think a lot of us can get main character syndrome in traffic and think, oh man, like this traffic, this person's like cutting me off, or I'm in construction and everything else. And I try to introduce gratitude in different ways, like not just the obvious before, like praying before a meal or before bed. I was like, before I get in my truck, or when I do get my truck, I'm grateful for having reliable transportation. It may break down on the way there, but it started. Thank you. I'm grateful for this. I have, a job that provides me enough, financial security where I have fuel, and I'm going to a place to meet with friends or family or whatever. And then something really weird happened. Whenever I get in traffic and there would be construction and see this guy working on the side of the road, I had a positive take on it. It was this guy is working in my community. He has a job. He's providing for his family. Like he's contributing to make my community better. This is awesome. Like, who cares if I'm being inconvenienced 30 seconds for having to stop at this, orange cone? And I know that's a silly example for a lot of people, but again, ounces equal pounds. And if you find ways to kind of hack this over time, it really, really does add up, because there are a lot of negative inputs that you'll find that do add up over time. And it's like, again, I think if more people focused on the little things that they can control in their lives, the collective society impact would be greater than everybody trying to focus on the top down stuff. And unfortunately, I think a lot of social media is forcing a lot of people to think about the things they have zero control over. And everybody's outraged about it, and there is nothing they can do about it. Everybody has an opinion on it. And so even the statistics around YouTube consumption, there's like a billion hours of YouTube consumed every day. That is collective humanity, effort, and intention. What if we focus that towards improving our communities a little bit? And here, yes, I am preaching on a pulpit here and everything, but still, as a hypothetical exercise, what if we all like put a billion of humanity's hours towards just making our communities just a little bit better? And I think a lot of people don't have that perspective. And a lot of our mutual friends spend a lot of time on preparedness, and rightfully so. But I think that a lot of people are neglecting. They might be focused on their physical preparedness or tactical and all these other different things, but they're neglecting the psychological component to their day to day. And as AI and all these other different systems integrate into our lives in a more meaningful way, I think a lot of people are going to find cognitive and emotional atrophy in a way that makes us very unhealthy.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much there, but I love that you talked about gratitude. I love that it's a chapter. I believe it's a chapter in the book. And I love that you talk about it, because I find when I'm intentional about that, showing gratitude in the morning and then in the evening in particular, knowing that the rest of the in-between hours are going to be spent with other people trying to antagonize me and get me to, especially only on the device really, to influence my thoughts and behaviors and outlook through a negative input on either their part or the part of the algorithm that fed it to me or whatever. And that's a lot of the day if I'm trying to have a social presence as part of my business and outreach and engagement, and a way for me to thank people who listen to the podcast, listen to the books, read the books, watch the show, whatever it is.
You're fantastic at.
Well, I try. I mean, I really feel grateful for this, because I've wanted to do this my whole life, and this is a way for me to say thank you. Other than before, let's say in the 80s or 90s, you had to be on book tour and look someone in the eye and thank them, and I love that part. But now I can do it off book tour. I can do it the rest of the year, and I really feel really feel grateful that I can do what I love doing, which is right. But the other side of that is it's on this device that's feeding me. As much as I try to ignore the negative stuff, it still gets there. It still creeps in. And once again, it's my choice to engage with it or not, and I don't. But it's still in. It still took a little bandwidth. So it drives me a little bit crazy. But we've talked about this book for a while now, you writing something, and you mentioned to me years ago, I think. And what made this the right time, and why was it something that you wanted to do on this topic in particular?
Yeah. I hate making it about me, but I guess that's the point, right?
Well, I mean, it's your experience, especially how you start it. I love how you start it with your day, a day like 15 years ago or whatever. And it's fantastic.
If you find any success in life, you question certain aspects of what your contributions are. And when I look back at a lot of the things that I did in the world of Web 2.0 and social media, I felt a lot of that was extracting time from people and creating sensational content and stuff like that. And hopefully those people were entertained. But in hindsight, there's the Jeff Goldblum quote from Jurassic Park: "You're so preoccupied about whether or not you could, you didn't stop to think whether or not you should." And when I say that, that's mostly pertaining to the world of social media and the things that we're racing to build because we can. And we can build it fast, we can break it, and we can think about it later. And unfortunately, I'm at that point now in my life where, I want to have children, and I'm looking back at my lifespan, and, I might not live another 20 years. I might live another 40 or 50, 60. And that's why doing the deathbed or, funeral exercise, the psychological thought exercise is so important to me, is because I think that you want to leave the world a better place. And people can debate in how you do that. It could be, again, very, very small. Like, I try to improve my ecosystem. I try to increase the carrying capacity of my habitat by, the regenerative agriculture and all these other different things, but also try to look at maybe some bigger things that I have, maybe a better way to contribute at scale. And I don't want to be, have like a Jesus complex or anything like that, where people think that they're going to save the world or whatever. But I am a big proponent of, if you have constructive things to say and solutions to offer, it's better than just criticizing and just being, I think criticism's cheap in a lot of ways if it's not constructive. And so I give you a perfect example to spin this around and make it not about me. We were talking about this the other day about Elon wanting to potentially create a third political party and everything. And I started thinking about it at a high level. If we were to take the Charlie Munger quote of show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome, what's the objective here? If we really wanted to fix what a lot of the political problems that people feel like they're having in society right now, we just think that there's no accountability. People vote people in and nothing happens. So how do we create accountability in that process. I was like, well, what if instead of creating, like he's richest man in the world, instead of creating a third party where I would argue you're not going to have enough people to, or enough votes to push legislation, you might be able to stop legislation and have that as a leveraging point for negotiation. But what if you created a political action committee and it bipartisan, and you just said, anybody we're going to support, if you want to run for candidate, we're going to pick a few key criteria. One, you're not going to increase the national debt. We're going to balance the budget. That's a hard line. You'll never vote to increase that. And you could say whatever the thing is, term limits or what. Pick your flavor, but it has to be doable in that that person it can be held accountable for it. It doesn't have to be a collective action like a vote. And so you say, okay, to do that, you have to be fully transparent about your income. Where does all your money come from? And then all your assets, define them, and you put them in an irrevocable trust. And then we're going to come in and we're going to be the executor of that irrevocable trust. And we're going to, or whoever, and we'll set the terms, much like wealthy people might do with trust funds for their children, and set stipulations. If you go to college, or if you do this, or if you, more importantly, if there are consequences, if you vote for this or you do this, we liquidate your assets, give them to your constituents, and whatever campaign contributions are reimbursed to the PAC from that. So there's some type of accountability for these people to not go back on their constituents. And I think a lot of people right now, everybody, like at every single cycle, it's the same thing. Like, everybody votes for the lesser of two evils. Nobody votes for somebody that they care about. And because they know that they're just going to get duped at the end of the day. So like, how do you start holding people accountable? So for me, these are the things that I like to think about. These are like, products and features and stuff like this. So for me, I was like, right now, I need to get my mind right. I need to figure out this whole dopamine thing, because, I have 1,500 skydives. How is my adrenaline impacting my dopamine system? Is that another reason why I've kind of felt lonely over the last couple of years going through this whole creator thing? And being somebody who gets tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of views on the internet, to somebody who's just farming, and then I don't have that social capital anymore. I'm not important. It's like trying to figure these things out. Well, there's going to be a lot of other people that are going to have to deal with these things. Somebody might, they might have a small account or whatever it is. I feel like digital and social experiences are creating, ironically, more isolationism than connecting a lot of people. Yes, there is the ability to communicate, but for me, I was like, okay, how do I attack this problem anecdotally and at least establish a set of tools that work for me, and parse all of this noise out there and find some type of signal with a lot of people who are doing fantastic, meaningful research, like Dr. Anna Lembke at Stanford, like the dopaminergic system. Amazing research. There's a lot of content creators specifically around the deep work movement and stuff like that, but they're in the hamster wheel. They have to create content on a regular basis. So there's a lot of noise, and it's really hard for the average person to parse all of that. They don't have, 26 hours in a day to sit down and watch a YouTube video. Now, to be fair, AI might help with that. It might help start parsing some of that stuff here soon. But for me, I wanted to go through the process. I wanted to cite as many people's research. I wanted to see what tools work for me. I wanted to work with a handful of other people to see what tools might work for them, and then try to distill that down in a really impactful way that people could just have actionable items. Like, again, criticism's cheap. Like I want people to walk away with something that doesn't cost them money, that they're able to execute on and find some type of measurable improvement in their life in that process. And I feel like I achieved it. I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, I was shocked at how great this book was, just because, I see a lot of books come through, people send me a lot of books, all that sort of thing. And, I knew you being you, that it would be great, but until you actually read it, you don't know 100% for sure. And then I opened it and I was just blown away by this book. Like I said, it's so important. And I think it's the first time that I've gotten a book that I bought for my whole family and the whole crew that helps with the business side of things. I think it's the only time that I've done that. So
that feels so good. Thank you. So coming from you, that feels amazing.
Man. Well, I think it's that important.
Worth its weight in gold.
Oh man. Well, I mean, it's that important. And you did such a good job with it. So it's not just the things that you've been talking about here in a book, it's the way that it's presented is done so well, and so well, in fact, that I hope you write more books as you continue on your journey here. But bringing it back to you, because you took it off you very, very, very cleverly. You took it off you. But bringing it back to you, do you feel guilty for any of the things that you feel being part of that? I don't know, digital economy or this time in our country's history, the world history, where things are shifting in such a dramatic way to be able to manipulate a populace through digital platforms. Do you feel guilty at all about being a part of that, or that's just like just a generation you grew up in, and that's just what you do?
That's a great question. I personally, maybe this is a coping mechanism, but I don't, because I wasn't an engineer.
And I don't think you should. By the way, I'm not asking that from a position, but I think you should. I was just curious if you did, but I don't think you should.
No, because I wasn't designing the systems. I was assessing, analyzing, and exploiting the systems. So I optimized for their algorithmic weights. And so for me, I played the game. Like another fabulous quote that I love is, "You play the rule book, not the game." And you'll find people in sports and history that really excel because they understand really truly what that means. Like you'll see that where different athletes, they'll think outside the box and they'll play a game completely different from everybody else, or in the Olympics. And it's like, wait, what? And everybody's standing around. Is that legal? Is that legal? Yeah. And so for me, it was like, how do I get as many shots on goal as possible to figure out what to exploit and what to optimize for? And I'm happy that I did it over the years, and I think in large part, that's what humanity is going to have to do in the future. Adaptation is the name of the game at this point. Because at no point in history I don't think a species had to evolve as frequently, as fast as we are. And there's going to be some collateral damage in so many different ways. So for me, I'm trying to stay optimistic. I'm trying to stay happy if I can, but more importantly, just excited about building and testing these things. Like the whole AI thing. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there, but we can have some fun along the way.
But that's what you've always done. That's also your, from the beginning, like when I've gone back and looked at some of your, earlier stuff, or you've told me about it or whatever, there's always this positive thing. There's always your laugh and humor, and it's positive, and it's like, and not everybody does that. Nobody uses these platforms in the same way. And I'm reminded when I've talked to you, and this is not just because of the book, it's from years of knowing you, that like you think differently about things, which is something I really respect. When you meet someone that thinks differently about something, it makes me really pay attention. And it reminds me of and I'll probably get the date wrong here a little bit. I think it was late 90s probably, when Apple did their ads with the Think Differently, when they had, from the, Muppet creators and like all, film, and they had television, and they had literature, and they had music, and they had technology, and they had all these things. They had social, they had all of those little photos, like almost like a high school yearbook type thing up there. And it was in, magazines or whatever at the time. So must have been late 90s or something, when Apple was just starting to kind of come back. And I think that your picture is one of those, belongs up there with those people who think differently, and now through what can have a real impact on the world, which is why I'm buying it for my family and for everybody that works for me, because it is so important. But I think you can think about it now that you've lived it also, to also think differently about it, rather than just adapting to it in some sort of a rat race, but realizing what it is and how to use it, like you said, for the betterment of society, because really that's the only choice that we have in the end. And you've done it in such a great way in this book here. But I also wanted to ask you before we take off here. Sam Parr is in here. He did he wrote the introduction, and I just want to give a shout out to him because what a great guy he is. He has a podcast. What is it called? Is it My First Million?
My First Million.
Yeah. My First Million. I think he has a couple other things as well. But such a nice guy, and I was on his podcast about a year ago or so, and then we connected afterward. But what a great guy.
Dude, I so many compliments. I think I like it. Just it feels so great. Like I could get compliments from so many people, but like I respect you so much, and the fact that there are notes in that book means the world to me.
And I realize I'm not going to get to them all. I'm not even going to get to them all. And I stopped after a bit and just started writing down because I was like, well, I'm just going to be fumbling with the book the whole time. So I just wrote the page numbers down and stuff I wanted to talk about. But we really haven't gotten to hardly any of it. And that's okay because I want people to go out there and get this and see why I have notes in
hit
here.
Me with one.
And one was the introduction right here because I thought it was a fantastic way to start this off because I think people that are just going about their lives also lives their days like this because they're attached to their phone. In this case, you're making a living off it, but it was really no different than someone who's in the line at Starbucks or whatever else you're talking about, getting an apple fritter in this, I think, or something along those lines. But it's really no different than most everybody else going through their days now that are attached to this device. But I love how you wrote about it here. It was a great way to start it. And then you say, actually, this was my life. And this book is the wake-up call I wish I had back then. And that's why I asked the question about, do you feel guilty about anything? Because why do you wish you had all this back then? What would you have done differently over the past 15 or so years had you had this book back then?
Well, the person I'm constantly trying to please is myself 15 years from now. And, I look back, let alone 6 months ago, and cringe at the person who I was. Hopefully that's a sign of me changing, evolving, growing. But, there are some pretty, impactful moments in my life that I'm truly grateful for. And now I look at the way that we live a lot of our lives through our phones, which it's a very inefficient and efficient device. It's inefficient because it's not hardwired into our brain, so we're constantly reaching for it, or we leave it at home and we feel the separation anxiety and stuff like that. But there's a lot of research around memories, and a really fascinating one that I didn't include in the book, so we can chat about it here. But like how you one of the perceived kind of perceptions of time in a memory is like how you do something, whether or not it's repetitive. So whenever you're younger, you're experiencing different types of memories in a high variance. So it's very novel. And so going to school every day is completely different. So a lot of those things will stand out. But if you go to work and you drive to work the same way every single day for 10 years, your brain tends to forget that. And it makes it one memory. And so one of the things that a lot of people are doing is they're hardwiring their memories through the capturing of their phone or with their camera and their device. And so you're not actually logging the memory, you're logging the recording of the memory, and those are blurring in together. And so those truly meaningful moments in life are kind of slipping away from a lot of people because they're so focused on capturing it that they're not actually living it. And yeah, in some ways that might be a cop-out because some people do want to record those things, and I totally understand it. But I mean, how many people record 4th of July fireworks, and then how many people actually watch them outside of posting them to social media and everything? And so for me, as I go down this next chapter in life with kids and family and everything else, I don't want to be that guy. So
yeah. Well, interesting about that. So for our daughter, the things were still going to hard drives when I'd have to download, plug in the camera or whatever, take the photos and download to a hard drive that are now stacked somewhere else. But now I have all these memories from our youngest, who's now 14, and I have all those photos on essentially this phone for the most part, except for when he's really young, I think. So they're cloud-based. So I don't have to physically find a hard drive and plug it in and scroll through and try to find a photo anymore. Yeah, obviously for the last 15 years, everything's been in the cloud. You could opt for it early, and now it's just the thing is whatever it is. But I love that I have those photos of him now that pop up from those early days. My wife and I always like, oh, the memories that pop up. I know it's distracting if you're going to your phone and all of a sudden the memory pops up and you're like, oh, wait, what was I supposed to be doing? Now I'm reliving this memory on the beach in Coronado, California before I got out of the SEAL teams. And there's a little one on a surfboard, and there's his sister running through the surf or whatever. And they're really cool now. Like, I love having those.
I'm a total hypocrite. I feel the same way. I got a camera roll full of dogs. Like I could show you 30 photos of the last week of my different dogs pooping. Because I
maybe that's a bit much.
I joke that I'm going to print those out and I'm going to frame them, and I'm going to have a bathroom that's just all framed photos of the dogs pooping. So when people go, they go to the bathroom.
Interesting. You're probably the first one. I think you're probably the first one to do that.
Yeah, I totally get that with the photos of things that you care about and everything. It's just interesting to me, and like the preservation of memory and how you're hardwired to or neurologically like functioning in a way that optimizes for whatever storage capacity you have. So some stuff over time is going to get stored away in a long-term instead of short-term memory.
Yeah, in a different way. It's tough to see those phones up at concerts when it used to be some lighters back in the 80s, now it's all phones and everything. And how many people are going to rewatch those like you said, but they're actually not looking at the concert, they're looking at the phone, looking at the concert. So yeah, it's a strange time to be coming up, that's for sure. And for our kids especially, like I was old enough to realize I'm being manipulated right out of the gate, and to whatever extent I could, not allow it to manipulate me, except for those little negative things that get in there that take up a little bandwidth and then disappear until you see the next one. But that's the trade-off of essentially having that engagement online or through these social channels and thanking people and having some sort of a presence out there to engage with an audience and a readership that I couldn't have done 30 years ago as an author. So there's that. Yeah. That's part of the trade-off that I've accepted. Would I rather just be in a cabin in the mountains, writing a book and sending it to New York and like doing one interview on one of the old legacy media things and then go back to writing? Yes, absolutely. But I realized, speaking of adaptation, that's not the world we live in. And I realized that very close to the publication of my first book, which is why there's a podcast and social channels and a website that gets an updated blog and all these different ways to engage and a merch thing and all the rest of it. So I think it takes more effort to build an audience today when those devices are trying to keep you from reading a book. Yeah. They're trying to keep you from doing this. Whereas back in the day, hey, if a publisher saw traction on a new book, they could put an ad in the New York Times or the Washington Post. They could put a full page one in there. As an author, you're not doing anything there. Maybe you're approving some copy on it. Maybe not, probably not back then. You're just writing your book. But now the landscape has changed.
Yeah, and you absolutely kill it. You absolutely crush it. You're not only one of the best. I'd say you're probably the best out there when it comes to authors and just execution around the whole digital along with the publication component. And so my question to you would be, do you have goalposts like for the game?
Like as far as a goalpost, as far as like a number where I don't have to do this anymore?
Do you have a shot clock in any way, shape, or form? Like, because
it's continual adaptation.
Really? Okay.
Just like the battlefield.
I feel like you would romanticize that cabin.
Oh, well, don't get me wrong there. If there may be a number, but that's always changing too, based on all sorts of other factors out there in society with inflation, whatever else. And that's fine. It's a very big number to be able to step away and then to take care of our son with special needs for a full-time care for life. Like it's a very large number. But it means that I need to keep adapting just like I did on the battlefield. Like I don't just adapt day one of deployment. No, because the enemy is going to be adapting throughout the rest of the 6 months that I'm there. And I have lessons to pass back to the guys that are still stateside so they can train up in a way that is most advantageous to them so they hit the ground running when they arrive in Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever they're going. But an enemy is always adapting. To me, I'm always adapting to that enemy. I need to do it a little quicker than they do it to end up on the right side of that engagement. Got to capitalize on momentum, got to look for gaps in that enemy's defenses. It's constant downrange. And that's because I didn't want to ever be that guy, and this is the the power of popular culture. I didn't want to be that person that I saw in 80s movies or TV shows that had made a bad decision in Vietnam or made a decision in Vietnam that got someone killed or whatever. Now they're on their couch in 1985 as a private investigator or a police officer or a stuntman or whatever they're doing, but they're still stewing on that thing that happened in 1968, 69, 70 or something like that. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't leave any of that on. Nothing was left on the field. I was as prepared as I could possibly be. I was the best leader, best operator I could possibly be. And I was a better operator today and a better leader today than I was yesterday. And that was constant. And the pendulum was always on the side of that. It had to be. But it's similar in this, and no one's going to come home in a body bag if I, mess something up on socials or whatever. So it's different, but it's the same type of an outlook as far as adaptation goes.
I completely agree. And I love the way that you put it too, because, ISR, being able to assess the landscape, that is so important. And so many people are going about their lives without doing that. And whether or not the goalposts change is up to you, and that's fine. Like the tragedy comes is if you are, 80 years old and you look back and you did kind of leave room for something, you didn't put it all out on the field. And that's where the tragedy comes in regret. And as long as and that's, I try to make it as clear as possible in the book, is I'm not advocating for abstinence when it comes to, digital usage in any way, shape, or form. It's just providing tools if people want to throttle or want any type of insight in that process. But the tragedy is if you let this get extracted, your time get extracted from your life, and then it goes by in a way that you look back on and you don't have an opportunity to get it back, because even the billionaires can't get it back. Right. Yeah. And they're trying to, hijack, or they're, optimize for health span and everything.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is nobody's getting out alive. And so you'd be doing yourself a huge disservice if you didn't have some type of assessment of what your goals are, what are the things that you find important in life. And it could be anything. It could be, trivial to one person. It could mean the world to somebody else, but define what those things are and then hold that up against your consumption in any way, shape, or form. Is it, costing you? And that is the very definition of addiction, right? Sacrificing long-term goals for short-term gratification. And I would say that, doom scrolling and rage baiting on social media is short-term gratification. You can do it for work or whatever it is, but are you really cutting it off at the end of the day? I would argue most people aren't. And if you're honest about it, then hopefully you can find some type of meaningful improvement in the quality of life in that process.
You talk about all that stuff in here, that addiction in here, and then you have some practical solutions and some other things that you can do to take back some of that time, that ever important time, and it's all spelled out in here. I want to read. I also want to read a couple last little things here before I let you go, though. And one of them, thank you, of course. After the introduction that I liked so much, I was so surprised to see, as in your example of someone going through their day and how the big tech is kind of optimizing their choices, I guess, for the gain of big tech. But you talk about you've just watched a 30-second pre-roll advertisement on a new Amazon Prime series called The Terminalist, starring Chris Pratt. Epic. You love the Joe Rogan podcast with Jack Carr, author of the book series that it's based on, but that's not why you're here, blah, 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 and you keep going. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And then we talked a little bit about this, but it's consciously or unconsciously, big tech utilizes tactics from gaming and gambling industries to draw you in and keep you hooked. At the same time, they exploit your natural fight or flight response, the one that evolved to help humans survive stressful and life-threatening situations. This response is truly helpful when faced with imminent danger, not not so much as a 24/7 state of being, which actually is, it's like the exact opposite of that. If you're doing it 24/7, which is what the phones are keeping us in, unfortunately. But man, dude, I want to thank you for writing this and taking the time to do all this today. This is so much fun. I really want everybody to get this. I have my eye on the clock, and I know our time is up, but Brick App, you mentioned Brick App in here near the end, and it's been minimized on my computer for probably 7 months. Like I have if you saw my computer, so many things are like minimized for research for the last book, for the one that's coming out in October 1968, because I'm doing all this research all the time and I'm checking things all the time, and it ended up taking a lot more effort than I thought to write a book through the lens, every sentence through the lens of 1968. So anyway, the bottom of my screen is all these things that are minimized. One of those in there is the Brick App, which you recommend, and then getting a light phone. I think that's maybe my next step. But short term, I have somebody now that's going to post for me, so that even if it might be a little bit faster for me to actually post, now I write it all up, I do my thing, and I send it to them, so that I'm not immediately fed with something that takes my attention away, and then I'm just going to scroll for a little bit, or I wonder what this is, or so I can check that stuff at the end of the day, or I can click, I can say thank you to everybody at the end of the day, or whatever else. But I'm not getting that first initial thing out of the gate, or a post, or multiple posts throughout the day. I'm not seeing any of those things. Big tech isn't getting that input. The person that's posting for me is like, they'll see that, but they're being paid to do that. So that's a first step to reclaim some of that time.
And there's so many, like, again, I want to emphasize this, that there's no one right way to do things. Like, I tried this thing where there's a grayscale mode for your display, and I put a matte screen protector on it so that my phone looked like an e-ink device. And again, it's one of those few things that makes your phone less visually stimulating.
Yeah.
You were talking about the gambling thing. I went through so many different books on addiction, from pornography to alcohol to substance, and gambling by far is the worst, without a doubt. And it's the variability in the reward system that makes it so compelling to a lot of people, because truly the next time could be the time that changes everything. And all of those components have been integrated. The variability, and when you post to social media, is it going to get who's liking it? Like the one of the best things that Instagram ever did was being able to show people who had liked their posts, in that sense, and stories and stuff like that, because people will go back and they will constantly scrub through who's been looking at their photos and stuff versus who liked them, and all these other different things. It feeds the ego, and there's so many different aspects to this hamster wheel, and there's so many different tools. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm trying to tell people to abstain from social media. That this is the guy who made a living off of it, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, you would be doing yourself and your future self a disservice to not have an honest conversation about the things that you care about in life, where the goalposts are, how are they moving, assess what types of boundaries you can integrate. And then, if not through the book, through other people and communities and stuff like that, figure out some tools that might help you in that process. Because again, actions speak louder than words. And so criticism is cheap. So let's move this to a more positive, better world for people out there.
Yeah. I don't know. So you're hopeful then?
You have to be. You have to be. And because again, it's one of those things where not to be like nihilistic but I got in this conversation with a tech entrepreneur buddy the other day, and I was like, dude, to be brutally honest, like, if you are so negative about the future and everything else, well, why are you still here? Like, if it's all crap and you're in this negative environment and everything sucks and the world's only going to get more worse, what are you doing? Like, you have to choose. Like, I never want to bet against humanity. Like, I think that, and I've said this time and time again, but I think that the spirit of humanity shines in the face of adversity. And we have never been in more trying times than now, and most people don't even realize it. And I think that if we at least lay out what the battleground is and just assess what we're dealing with, I would not want to bet against humanity. I think that people love to overcome adversity, and I think we're really, really good at it. I think the problem is a lot of people just don't know what's going on.
Is AI reliance betting against humanity?
Well, my optimistic view on that is, again, like there's way smarter people out there. I would hope for some type of AGI, ASI before some type of assimilation, because from a single point of failure, vulnerability. The second we integrate technology, we become transhuman. We put chips in our brains and stuff like that. There's software, there's hardware, exploits that will always be there. And you have to think about it from a competitive advantage. If you put a chip in your head and you're able to compute 2 times what the average human can compute or search or index or whatever, you have a competitive advantage like nobody else in history. You're instantly the smartest person out there. So everybody will be forced to get those, or it'll be the Jetsons and the Flintstones trying to cohabitate or coexist. And I think it'll just be too disproportionate as far as the haves and the have-nots, intellectually and maybe even financially, and as far as resources are concerned. So, and again, I'm able to have this conversation with anybody to prove me wrong, but I would think that an ASI or an AGI super intelligence would be way more beneficial if it existed and we stayed human and we didn't try to integrate with technology, because there's too many points of failure. And we've seen that there's never in the history of technology been a perfect device that didn't have some type of vulnerability or flaw either in the hardware or the software. And I don't want to be the guy who's forced to integrate that into my lived experience. And then, oh, by the way, here comes a civilization like collapse because the batteries were bad, or somebody found an exploit and they decided to turn everybody off or something like that.
Wow. I'm gonna have to talk to you about my next book for either next year or the year after. But
I am so excited to read your books. You do not understand. I've tried to explain to people when they're like, well, like, okay, they're military. No, think Black Mirror meets Tom Clancy books times 10. It's epic. It's so epic. And you have such an insanely clear track record of being like 2 or 3 years ahead of the curve. It's wild.
Well, that's why I hope this next one. That's why I had to go back to 1968 for this one that comes out in October. But for the next one, I'm really hoping that one is not just 3 or 4 years out as far as what it predicts or sees as a possibility. But it might be. But I want to talk to you about it. I'll love to talk again over the next few months.
Love it. I love it. Well, so if I do another book, it won't be around the dopaminergic system. We'll see how this one does. If it does enough interest out there, then my gravitation is towards cybersecurity for the average person. Oh, wow. And I think the average person doesn't understand, much like the attention economy, the tracking component and the security component to, as we get into this world of artificial intelligence. The average person just really isn't prepared.
Oh, wow. Okay. We'll have to talk to you about all that stuff. I have we'll talk more. We'll talk more going ahead, but man, I thank you again for writing this. I'm so excited that you're also going to do the audiobook, because so many people, especially that hear something on a podcast, I think are more apt to take that leap by listening to something via the same medium that they just heard about it. It's just a comfortable way to do it. If you're listening to this podcast, then you just click on, and now you're listening to the book that you just heard about. But I hope everybody adds it to their library physically also. And a lot of people I know are doing both the audio and getting the hard copies as well these days. And they're listening to it on their commute, and they're getting home and they're reading a few chapters before bed or whatever it might be. And I just did that for the first time. maybe the second time, with Strangers in Time by David Baldacci, who came on the podcast a few days ago, or a couple weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
And it was really cool to hear how they did the audiobook, because they had multiple actors doing it. And then when I got home, I needed to finish for the podcast. So I did about maybe 3/4 of the book on audio, and then I finished it with the hardcover. And it was a really cool way to do it. So I'll probably be doing that a little more. But anyway, I hope everybody gets this book, add it to the library, and get the audiobook when it comes out. It's so important. I can't stress enough how important it is that everybody reads this book.
I'd also encourage people to contribute to the conversation. Again, kind of the theme of the book is, being proactive in that and contribute to the conversation. If you do find tools, things that are meaningful to you in your experience, like leave a review, communicate with other people out there. Again, criticism's cheap, but if you have something constructive that maybe helps somebody else in their process and their struggles and everything, you're doing everyone else a service by putting it out there into the universe. So.
Yep, the reviews are so important, as are the digital word of mouth conversations or recommendations from people, not just around the water cooler verbally, but digitally to whatever your circle is. So once again, man, thank you for writing this, and thank you for sending it in such an amazing way. That was so cool to get that. I was just blown away when I got that. I was so excited, and hopefully I'll see you at your place down there soon, because it's such an amazing spot. I actually love your place down there. So hopefully we can link up soon, and I can see how it's evolved over the last few years.
Man, it's truly an honor. I can't thank you enough.
Oh man, thanks so much for everything, and we'll make that happen soon.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Later, brother.
This episode of the Danger Close podcast is brought to you by Cry Havoc. From New York Times #1 bestselling author Jack Carr. Cry Havoc, a Tom Reese thriller. Order now.
Watch a Cry Havoc teaser here, or watch another episode of the podcast here.